Hello, I'm Dudley Thompson, and welcome again to WDT Media TV. And again, please like, share, and subscribe. When I want to join at the PNP's press conference, we're talking about the GLP use state resources to fund their election campaign. Let's not hear now from PNP leader Mark Golin accusing the GLP again of using state resources to fund advertising giveaways to boost their election campaign and also aid in getting voters. Mark Golden giving more details.
In the case of West Central St. Andrew, however, the nature of the irregularities which took place there is being carefully scrutinized in anticipation of a case being brought to the constituted authority for appropriate relief. I won't be able to answer more questions on that today. That matter is with our lawyers. While we don't have sufficient evidence to mount a legal challenge against the outcome of the elections, we are nonetheless deeply concerned at the extensive and I would say vulgar use of state resources to impact the outcome of the election over the campaign period. Specifically, the massive political advertising paid for by ministries, departments, and agencies of government during and up to election day at the cost of taxpayers to benefit the incumbent JLP administration is problematic. And we are going to have to, as a nation, look at the way in which public resources are used in support of political achievements in the election period. We're also concerned about the unprecedented scale of distribution of benefits, black tanks, fertilizer, building materials, cash, by both the state and the Jamaica Labour Party. And in some cases, it's very different to distinguish one from the other. And we have received numerous reports of widespread suppression of PNP votes across marginal constituencies, with reports of very large sums of money being paid. And this strategy was enhanced by the timing of the elections and related giveaways in the back-to-school week, when parents in low-income families in particular are most vulnerable and could be financially induced to prioritize loyalty to their families and their children over party loyalties. A second concern we have is in relation to some aspects of the operations as conducted by the Electoral Office of Jamaica. We think there should be an independent inquiry into the operation of the 2025 general election, and it should be urgently undertaken with changes implemented for future elections, because we need to improve the processes. In particular, the process that results in hours-long waits at many polling stations by voters who turn out to vote, frustrating electors and causing many to leave without voting. And this factor is exacerbated by the law, which only gives 3 hours as a window to employees to be away from the workplace during working hours for voting, which is clearly inadequate in Jamaica's modern realities when you consider the time for transportation to get to a polling station from the workplace, depending on where the person works and where they vote, and the lengthy delays in the lines in some polling stations. We also need to look at the use of finger inking. That was originally implemented to prevent multiple voting, but it currently facilitates voter suppression as persons are being induced financially to dip their finger in ink prior to the vote and then being paid not to vote. We have several reports of this being done. We're also concerned about the black book, and we believe that the polling that is used in polling stations, it must be made available during the polling process for viewing by indoor agents and not left entirely to the presiding officer to identify voters who present themselves without IDs, because if the presiding officer is operating in a way that is not satisfactory from an independent, impartial point of view, there needs to be the ability of the indoor agents on either side to scrutinize what is going on there. And the integrity of the voters list needs to be re-verified through a comprehensive re-verification of voters to clean it of dead voters in particular and other voters who don't have a place of residence in the constituency where they vote. We will be sending teams into those constituencies which were most affected by these issues to conduct a field survey. This survey will empower Jamaicans who experienced or witnessed these issues to share their experiences with us. Many persons are deeply upset by what took place, and this process will allow them to get some closure. It will also assist us to advocate for changes to the law and the processes of elections that will ultimately help to protect Jamaica's democracy from tactics that clearly affected the ultimate outcome of the 25 general election and which are not contemplated by the system that we have. I will now hand over to our legal advisor.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. As you said at the beginning, the Secretary has commented, we are at this time not intending to have any magisterial recount. Other processes that are available, legal processes that are available, are being looked at based on the evidence that will come forward. I will just echo the point that you make about a review of the management of the election by the EOJ. I think after almost 30 years of the system that was robust at the beginning, I think there is no concern that gaps are opening up and they need to be examined. And we will be doing so by the processes that you have outlined in the various constituencies and regions as well. So the other point really is the legislative and regulatory improvements that may well result from all of this, which is to ensure that the use of state resources prior to and during elections are much better managed. And I think there are clearly loopholes there, and we need to fill those gaps through the legislation and or regulation. And I believe that the point was well made by the abuse that we saw during this election. Those are the points I will make at this time.
Thank you, MP Hilton. Now, so in relation to I know one of the media houses carried an article saying that we were going for a magisterial recount in 2 constituencies. I'm not sure where they got that report from, because we did not give that information to the media. We know that on the night of election, you have a preliminary count, and in the days after, you have the final count, which we waited on, so we could get what is the official result from the EOJ. And after looking at that, we realized that there were 3 constituencies: Central Kingston, East Central St. Catherine, and Northern Trelawney, where the number of rejected ballots were more than the margin of victory. However, when we consulted with the teams that were present for the final count, we were reliably advised by them that of the rejected ballots, they are split roughly evenly between the 2 main political parties, and therefore you would not get any material change in the result in the constituencies. And as a result of that, we took a decision not to pursue any magisterial recount. So that is the official position of the People's National Party. We do have some other concerns of acts of intimidation, aggression, and vandalism that would have taken place since the elections have been concluded. and specifically in South St. James, the Anchovy Division, persons have been making threats about removing the water pumps, and I think they even made reference to using dynamite and other things like that to destroy the infrastructure. We've seen videos as well and heard voice notes of persons in eastern Portland that would have made comments that resources would be limited to the newly elected member of parliament, Isaac Buchanan. We have seen as well in Southeast St. Mary, where there's been vandalism of a community center and the removal of certain infrastructure in that area. And probably the most concerning of them all is in South Trelawney, where a team from the Labour Party, led by persons in leadership, went to the house, the accommodation of our candidate, Paul Patmore, to threaten him. We believe that these things are intended to intimidate and weaken the democratic process within the country. And we are calling on the members of the Labour Party, the leadership, to rein in their supporters and for them to understand that we do believe in a democratic process and we have to accept the outcome. Similarly to how we have accepted the result at the national level, it can't be that they accept it at the national level, but at the constituency level, they are reluctant to accept that Isaac Buchanan did defeat Anne-Marie Vaz in a free and fair election that took place in East Portland, and that as the duly elected representative, he should be accorded with all the respect and the authority that should be conveyed on such a office. We also want to encourage our candidates across the length and breadth of the country to remove the paraphernalia that was put up during the time of campaigning. And some of our candidates will not have much to do because their opponents already removed them before the elections. But for those that still have up some material, we're going to ask them, use this opportunity to ask them to remove those paraphernalia. In West Central St. Andrew is a matter, as was said by the leader of the party, that the legal team that has been engaged by our candidate is putting together their documents, and for further information on that, they will speak at a later date. And so we'll leave it at that, and I will now open the floor to get any questions that may exist.
Siobhan Campbell, still Nationwide News. My question is to Mr. Golding. Based on the concerns raised, are you casting doubt on the legitimacy of the outcome of the 2025 general elections? And are you concerned that such doubts would raise speculation of Jamaican people and cast a shadow on Jamaica's electoral process?
Yes, it's nasty, man.
Widespread reports that we have received of voter suppression strategies that were employed, in particular to dissuade our supporters.
That outburst
and in
is
some
not from
instances our
WDT
workers
TV. Do apologize.
Voting, and in the case of workers, from turning up in some instances for the elections. I'm not seeking to in any way suggest that we are not accepting that the government that has been elected will be duly constituted. I don't want to go down that road. I don't think that's a wise road for Jamaica. But I also think
indulge me a couple of questions. One, given what you have described as acts of voter suppression, can you indicate whether or not PNP has made a formal complaint about electoral fraud or irregularities to any state organ? And if so, in what constituencies? That's one. Two, can you indicate, sir, what is the projected spend for the People's National Party during this election campaign? Can you say also how was it funded, and what percentage is corporate donation? And then finally, personally, Mr. Gordon, is this disappointing for you, and if so, how disappointing?
The answer to that is no. We are, as I've said, going into the field to do a survey so that we can get more tangible information rather than the indirect reports that we have been receiving. Through the reports we're receiving is really through both things like social media, but also more importantly through the campaign structures that we have. But we want to go into the field and get more, a more comprehensive survey of what is. At that point, we can decide, where we go from here. There isn't really any state agency that is mandated to address that issue. That's one of the challenges we have. So it's, that is something we'll have to consider carefully as the best way to proceed, to deal with this. Some of these things may require a strengthening of the electoral law itself, the Representation of the People's Act, which, to take into account the kind of methods and tactics that are being employed in this era relative to when that law was last amended or reviewed. Other things may just require an internal response as to how we manage that kind of process going forward. So that's my answer to your first question. Your second question was about campaign finance. Yeah. I haven't seen from our treasurer yet a final report on the level of funding raised and expended. Based on my assessment of it or knowledge of it, I would say most of the funding that we raised came from donors. Some are corporate donors, some are individual donors. And I'm very sure that they were within the overall envelope allowed by the law in terms of the limits. I can tell you that because I have a sense for the numbers, but I don't have the specifics. And the third question was about my part. Yeah, it's a mixed feeling. I feel pleased that we are on the up and up, that we have managed to double the number of MPs that we have in Parliament, that we are going to have a team in Parliament now. And the fact that we got 97,000 more votes this time than we got in 2020 is also significant as an increase. Our opponents got 5,000. So it was a definite improvement in our performance. Disappointment at the same time that we weren't able to deliver that final, 4 additional, call it 4, that we needed to just have 32, which is the threshold for winning. That was disappointing. That we needed to just have 32, which is the threshold for winning. That was disappointing. And when we look at the seats that we thought we would have won and didn't, we have to look carefully at why we weren't able to prevail there. I think that the reasons for that were more to do with factors that took place on election day itself and maybe the night before or 2 nights before, rather than the campaign as a whole. I think the campaign as a whole, we ran a pretty exemplary campaign. True. I think it was a much more active campaign than our opponents in terms of presence on the ground and meetings and rallies, and the attendance at those rallies. True. I think our manifesto was delivered in a reasonable time so people could digest it and was well received. I think that our performance in the election debates, where most people feel that we won each of the 3 debates, was also significant and helped us along. But, we weren't able to actually cross the line first because things went on, as I said, the very end of the process, which we were not able to respond to effectively on the day.
There you have it there. Highlights of the PNP's press conference responding to irregularities in the election. And they blame squarely on the ruling Jamaica Labour Party for those irregularities. I'm Dudley Thompson, and again, please like, share, and subscribe. And as usual, thanks for watching.